I'd just like to welcome you all to UK Jewish Fundraising Now III, which is the third of our live streams, third of our virtual conferences we've put together to support those who work in the Jewish charity sector through this COVID-19 crisis. Our aim is to build on the work that Simi and others have already done in the Jewish Community Charity Professional Chat Facebook group, which has been a great place for people to share knowledge and to help each other out. As I've said, that today the format is slightly different. We're doing a Zoom call to encourage audience participation and interaction. And we've got two great speakers joining us today, so there'll be plenty of time to ask questions and share your thoughts. We're going to have a further look at the Trust and Foundation landscape, what funders are doing now, and perhaps how the crisis will affect their giving priorities in the medium and near future. And also we've got the views on recruitment, jobs, furloughing, interviews. What does this crisis mean for job hunters and recruiters? So for those who don't know me, I'm Ben Morrison, I'm a fundraising consultant, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, Simi. Simi, Yom Hazikaron, Yom Hatzmaut. How are you? How are you doing? What's going on?
Emotional, if I'm really honest, because for me, Yom HaZikaron, Yom Ha'atzmaut, from an Israeli family is a very personally emotive time. Working for an Israeli charity, it's a really emotive time. You go from that real sadness to celebration, and I think everyone is doing that several times a day at the moment with the general situation. And any missed opportunity to celebrate just feels sad. So it's nice to see that there are so many amazing online initiatives bringing people together once again to commemorate and then to celebrate. And also the change in weather. I know that everybody's probably feeling a bit, that they've lost their sunshine, but actually I think it probably does affect everybody's mental health in different ways, and trying to find the positives for me is as small as it sounds. At least I can get my jogging bottoms back on again for my work day. So trying to find my little wins wherever I can, but overall I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, yeah, I'm okay, thank you. I'm okay, still got the cough, but we'll get on there. It's been really interesting, the last two calls we've done. It seems that the word collaboration has shone through, and it'd be interesting to see if that also comes through today. Maybe not, but I thought I'd just mention that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you all to Andrew Clark. And Andrew is the manager. Can you hear me, Andrew?
Yep.
Yeah, great. Andrew is the managing director of Apostle Charity Consultancy, who specialise in prospect research, applying to grant-making trusts and foundations, and faith-based fundraising. And really interestingly, earlier this year, Andrew launched jewishgrants.co.uk, which is an online platform cataloguing over 500 trusts and foundations specific and relevant to the Jewish community. We've actually got, thank you to Andrew, a discount code for those of you out there that wish to purchase this, and we'll talk, and I'll leave the link in the group later. But I thought it'd be great to invite Andrew from outside the community to come in to talk about his view on what's going on in the Trust and Foundation world, what funders are doing at the moment, and maybe how people should be looking ahead for their, for current funding and for short and medium term. So over to you, Andrew, for some thoughts, please.
Great. Thank you, Ben, for that very kind introduction, and hello to everyone on the call today. Good to see you all. So my name is Andrew, and as you rightly say, Ben, the majority of our work is with faith-based organisations, and I spend most of my working week building cases of support for clients and submitting applications primarily to grant-making trusts and foundations. And every week I'm speaking to dozens and dozens of funders about their current trust fundraising situation And trust fundraising is really the area which we enjoy the most doing. So the current situation, how I understand it and what I've been gleaning from the market over the next couple of weeks, is that in my conversations with trust, I'm hearing the vast majority are still open. They're still open for business as usual. Lots are reviewing applications offline, either because we submit them online, or they're kind of reviewing applications as part of e-committees. So trust fundraising in the short term is probably the most stable of the income options to consider. And we've obviously seen a huge injection of cash from all sorts of areas into the grant market, and obviously they're tailoring the short-term investment in response of the social situation regarding the kind of COVID-19. I would say in my conversations with grant making trusts, I would say exclusively they are wanting to know how the COVID-19 situation has and will affect your organization over the next 3 to 6 months. That is really critical and really important to consider. Recently, I had a very large grant which I've been working up with the trust over the last couple of months for a young person's mental health counselling charity, and it was going to be judged at their April board meeting, and then we had virtually had it in the bag, and obviously the social situation hit, and they understood that that particular charity did a lot of face-to-face counselling, and obviously that had been put on hold, and that's where their grant was potentially going to. So they came back to us wanting to know, how would we spend the money if a grant was given, and how was the COVID-19 situation going to affect the operational delivery? So we had to very quickly submit a revised application just to really speak into how the COVID situation was changing the way we were going to deliver our services over coming 3, 6 or even 12 months and beyond. The good news is grants are being turned around a lot more quicker. I would say trusts are kind of responding to the current situation, but I would say are still favouring kind of more higher risk organisations, for example, the elderly, those distributing food, homelessness, or domestic abuse, etc. I've been looking very carefully at the National Lottery Community Fund, which has been a very changing picture almost daily, but it seems to have settled down a little bit now. And I know, for example, the Reach and Community strand, which traditionally would have taken many months, kind of 6 months plus really to do kind of a 2-stage application for lottery, have now streamlined that down in just a one simple form. And I think this is going to be turned around in a matter of weeks, which is great. But again, they're only interested in what your organization is going to be doing over the next 6 months. They're not really looking beyond that at the moment. And again, they will be prioritizing very high risk organizations. My worries really for trust fundraising for the longer term is that perhaps with charities who traditionally had a large percentage chunk of their income face-to-face community or events will now be turning their attention to trusts and foundations, which is obviously great for them, but it will increase competition in an already quite crowded marketplace. And if there's going to be huge impacts, not on our own, but obviously a global economy, and that is still very uncertain. So that will have an implication and an impact on how much income charities can get accrue from their investments potentially, and subsequent knock-on effect to their grant making, maybe not in 2020, but certainly in 2021 and going forward. So just to conclude, Ben, I would say my kind of top tips, if you like, in terms of potential trust and foundation activity for your charity. Definitely consider trust and foundations at the moment, because it is still a good and stable source of income, particularly for the short term. I would say understand very clearly and very quickly how the COVID-19 has and will be affecting your organization over the coming months, because funders are wanting to hear this and they're posing this question all the time. Think about what new costs, kind of capital and revenue you are or will be incurring, but importantly, articulate how you are addressing the changes in your operational delivery and what impact this is having on your beneficiaries. And finally, just plan really, really well now for the future. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I would imagine the whole charity sector is going to be like this in some state to the end of a calendar year. So now is a perfect time to do that planning. So start making lists of funders you could approach now and within the next 3 months, but maybe almost pipeline larger long-term funding applications, prepare them and submit them towards the end of the year, and use excellent prospect research tools. For example, jewishgrants.co.uk. I strongly recommend it.
Well, but there we go. Nice little plug at the end there, which is fantastic. Well, that's really interesting. Thanks for that overview. And I'm sure the people on the Zoom have got some questions, and maybe we can address those towards the end of the course. So thank you, Andrew, for that. I'm now delighted to introduce our next guest. Here's Simon Lloyd, speaking all the way from Dorset. Correct, Simon?
Correct, yep.
Correct,
wet,
yes.
Wet and soggy Dorset, yes.
Wet and wetland. So Simon is the director and founding director of NFP Consulting, and he brings over a decade of executive search and selection. Simon's been involved in helping many Jewish charities across the UK, up and down the UK, with their recruitment. And I know that recruiting, furlough, it's a worrying time for some, and I think that Simi, you've got to kick off perhaps maybe some thoughts. Simi, I know that you've got a question you just wanted to pose to Simon, and then Simon, if you wouldn't mind speaking for a few minutes, and then about your thoughts about what you're seeing out there. So Simi, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, what I wanted to ask was, recruitment under normal times can be nerve-wracking and fraught for people. Under COVID times, it's unprecedented, and I wanted to know if there was anything that you could offer by way of introduction to people, just some advice to try and balance the concerns they have right now about whether they're furloughed, whether they should be having an eye on a plan B, or whether somebody has lost their job or chosen to leave. What recruitment looks like right now, because nobody knows what the future can possibly look like at this point.
Sure. I think I just echo something that Andrew just said about your trust fundraising use this as an opportunity to think about the future, because things will be different. We just don't know how they will be different. So all the things that you were normally doing, if you're an employer that you might be looking to recruit, or you're thinking about your next career move, still think of that in the longer term. Absolutely right. There is a huge amount of panic out there at the moment, and indeed a lot of distress. On the assignments that we're continuing to work on, I got an application for a director of operations for a human rights charitable foundation in London from a warehouse manager in New Jersey. And I've had other applications from 3 Greek islands, South Africa, Canada, Norway, Sweden. There's a lot of distress out there. I mean, when people think they're going to be getting on a plane, let alone relocating, is just beyond me. So yes, there's a lot of panic out there. I think employers are also panicking, but I think longer term, employers will be, in charity sector and within the community as well, employers will necessarily be looking to how they restructure their organisations, and including their fundraising departments. So going back to Andrew's point, you've got to plan for the future, and hiring managers, chief executives, directors of fundraising, you'll be doing that as you go along, trying to maintain that longer term view alongside dealing with the immediate. If we look out in the market at the moment, recruitment has just fallen off a cliff. Most recruiters have got just a very few number of jobs on at the moment, and all the jobs boards are way down on their activity. Recruitment is just not on people's horizon at the moment. But as I say, it will come back. But none of us knows what the sector is going to look like in 6, 9, 12 months. So continue to do all the things one ought to be doing. I always think that recruitment is a bit like prospect research and going for a major donor fundraising. You identify your prospects and you cultivate those. If you're an organisation, you want to keep contact. You want to be visible within the networks and be visible to the top talent that you want to recruit into your organisation. And if you're an individual looking for your next career move, do the things you would normally be doing. Keep active on the professional and social networks, so you have a profile, so you're visible. The thing, the sector is not always as good as it could be on, and indeed, particularly in fundraising, is that underpinning professional development. If people have got time on their hands at the moment, yes, participate in networking events like this, but also look at other professional development, because going forward, I think that underpinning evidence of professional development is going to be an advantage for anyone looking to move in the future. Aside from that, I can't really offer any great solution to what it's going to look like in the future. I think, but it's just keep doing the normal things is all I can really offer.
Simi, I know you.
I also wanted to ask, do you think that this might start a shift, and nobody really knows what's going to happen, but because recruitment is your world, I was interested in your thoughts, that there is this movement to try and move away from traditional recruitment of what people have done before on their CVs to who they are as a person, their gifts, their skills, their abilities. And given that the entire employment field is about to change, do you think this might be an opportunity for a shift like that to happen?
Yeah, increasingly, before COVID, organisations were moving to a mix more of a competency and strength-based interviewing. Something I should have added about recruitment in the future. I think using mediums like this may be a lot more common. So people need to get used to the technology and get used to being comfortable with using it. We've run a couple of selection processes recently, and it was really noticeable that the varying levels of competence and how comfortable people were with it, particularly if you're going to have to do presentations through screen sharing and that sort of thing. So yeah, get familiar with the technology. But yes, you will see a lot more of that, a lot more values-based interviewing and selection. Online psychometric assessments have been around for a long time, and I think they're going to be used increasingly. So there are all sorts of practice. Ben, I can send you some sort of examples that you could circulate to people if you're interested in, what personality profiling looks like, what the kind of questions you're going to be asked. If you're interested in what motivational questionnaires look like, I can send through a few links like that. But yes, Simi, I think very much so. It's not just looking at the what somebody has done and just looking at competences. It's going to be those other additional aspects of who you are. One exercise or one element that we use in senior appointments quite frequently is something called Petra Kucha. I don't know if anybody here has come across that yet, but it's a fascinating format where you're given 20 slides, and you speak to each slide for 20 seconds. Yeah. And the format is to tell your story about who you are. And it's really interesting about how different people approach that. Some people take it chronologically. So here I am as a baby, and this is me going through school and so on. Other people, they take a much more analytical approach to it. We did one the other day, and what the individual had done, he'd taken all the objects in his study and taken pictures of them and used that as a means of illustrating who they were, who they were. And that can be really insightful in terms of telling the organisation or letting the organisation know who you are, as well as what you can do.
That's interesting. That's really, yeah. I've heard of Petra Kucha. I think
I'll send that through to you, Ben. The sort of just the outline. So it originated, I think, within the architect sector in Asia, and it was a means of having shorter meetings and getting quickly to the point. But it's been adapted for selection processes. Really good.
So shorter meetings, all for shorter meetings. Okay, excellent. So Andrew, Simon, thank you so far. Now we're going to open up to you for questions to either the group or to Andrew or to Simon or to me or to Simi. Please do. Now you can either literally wave at me, but there are quite a few people on here, so I might miss you the first pass, or you can virtually raise your hand. I believe down the bottom there's a little way to raise a hand. So who would like to ask a question, or just unmute yourself and shout? Really don't mind. Who's going to be brave enough and go for it? Anyone? Hands everyone down. Everyone's asking, waiting for someone else to ask the first question. Ah, there we go. There we go. So we've got Samantha. Have we got a question? Or is that? There you go. Hi. I think you're. Let me unmute you. Let me unmute you. There we go. Go for it.
Thank you very, very much for the presentation. That was really interesting. I have sort of seen similar things. I'm a trust fundraiser at the moment. I was wondering if you've noticed a difference in that enthusiasm between large and philanthropic trusts. So your sort of institution grant givers and your family foundations, have they been mutually positive? I think that question might be more relevant for Andrew, but
Yeah.
anyone open to any?
Yeah. And did you get the whole of the question? I don't know if I unmuted.
I think I did. I think from what I've observed, I think they've been mutually responsive to the situation. I would say maybe the smaller family trusts have been a bit more hesitant. I've seen a couple have even paused their grant making programs for a couple of months just to take stocks. But certainly the larger trusts and foundations, they're really going for it. And I'm sure you've observed most have even created separate and additional pots to their kind of normal grant programs, which has been really encouraging. I guess disappointing in the sense that it had to come to a big national global disaster to get all this additional money and funding, from the government and from the trusts and foundations, but obviously it is welcomed. And what I'm telling my clients is that, because they're asking me, should we be jumping on these opportunities ruthlessly? And I'm saying, well, just carefully consider what was your old normal and what has changed in terms of what is your normal now. And that would probably mean some real changes in terms of either technology or some other revenue costs. So I think what I've been advising clients is to make the most of the opportunities presented to them now and respond genuinely to them.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got Jodie. Have you got a question? You've got your hands up. There you go. Are you there? Are you with us, Jodie?
Okay.
Yes. Jodie, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so what I wanted to ask is, are trusts and foundations going to be changing like their RFPs basically? So where we have applied and people are saying, maybe that's not going to be our remit anymore. Is that going to be more and more common?
Probably for me again, I guess.
Yeah.
I would say overall, I'm not sure. I mean, certainly those who have been in the pipeline with lottery, I've known a lot because I deal with a lot with large capital appeals, and many clients have gone down the heritage fund route, and those who have been in the heritage fund pipeline for many, many months have just had the bottom just taken out of their application and just told to kind of halt that and don't even think about it for the next 6 months. In terms of applying that to across the board, I would say my gut is probably not. I deal with a lot of Christian churches. I do a lot of work with churches, and obviously the types of funders they're applying to, their grant making priorities aren't really going to change because they've been established to support churches and for capital or repairs. So their grant making criteria is largely, I think, going to be unchanged. But certainly those who have a social conscience and very much for community focus will either kind of flex their grant making priorities in the short term, or hopefully kind of create new pots of money in additional to their main grant streams would be my hope. But I think it's too early to kind of say a wide sweeping statement across the whole sector would be my response to that question.
Right, and also, are they more like? Well, I work for a charity. Half the applications are for Israel, and are people going to be more local or localized giving? Do you think you see that happening?
Yeah, no, that is a very interesting and very fair question. I guess us as humans, I think we have nature kind of maybe be inward looking and could take care of our own. And I would say there probably is a sense of maybe grant making closer to home if a UK charity has kind of dual grant making priorities in Israel and England. If they're established like that, then I'd hope they would continue if they've got rules about grant making around that. But I would probably defer to colleagues around the table here to kind of get their insights. I haven't done too much international fundraising. My work tends to be more England and UK focused. So sorry, I can't answer your question fully, but my instinct would be hopefully they would remain the kind of international grant making levels as they have done in the past.
Jodie, I'm happy to
Thank
share
you.
our experiences. So Shared Tzedek's a hospital in Jerusalem. So we are front line in Israel right now.
Okay, sorry, I can't see who's talking.
It's Simi
Simi.
here.
Oh, hi, Simi. Hi, Simi.
Hi.
Yeah.
So as a frontline charity in Israel right now, we've had a very mixed reaction from people, some of whom are community big givers that said, not right now, we want to give closer to home. People that are following the media saying Israel's really prepared and the UK isn't, so they're perceiving the need being closer to home because of circumstances, and others who are smaller givers that have suddenly added zeros onto the ends of their gifts. And I think for me, the lesson has been why people give to you, and this has been such an incredible learning opportunity for us to see who our closest donors really are, not just about the amount that they give to us, but the value that they place on that gift. And we now really know who gives to us because they are close to the charity rather than because they should or because generations before used to. And I don't know if other people have had similar experiences, but that has been quite a gift for us to really be able to segment our donors in that way, to know who our real VIPs are from their perspective.
That's very interesting. Thank you.
I think, Simi, if I could just sort of comment on really follow up what you're saying, it really just goes to the core of the trusting relationship, what you're describing, that actually at this moment in time, donors trust you, your donors who you built the relationship with, trust you, and therefore are going to give to you, because, and it kind of emphasizes even more so how the importance of just building and right now maintaining that relationship with those key donors going forward, because I think you were saying last week, Ben, that now we've got time to do this. We have got time to maintain those relationships, and if you're finding that that's paying dividends, then that's really more proof in that respect.
Yeah, I think I've got another fundraiser in my team, and she's never enjoyed doing the stewardship piece, and she wouldn't mind me saying that. She is loving it right now. The phone calls, the non-ask phone calls right now are the part of her job she's enjoying the most. It's really, really interesting what's going on at the moment.
Yeah. And also what I was speaking to a client yesterday who was a top 10 national charity. They're raising over 100 million, and they've had to turn around an emergency appeal in a matter of days rather than the months they would have had to do it in. And the director of philanthropy was saying how, and this maybe is a point for leading on to something that Simon can comment on, that some people in the team who she wouldn't have expected to step up have stepped up so with great force and really shown great leadership, and have adapted to this pressured environment much better than other colleagues as well. And maybe, Simon, that this can bring the good out of people that perhaps they didn't know was in there. They've got skills at having to think quickly, or perhaps to pivot quickly. What would you?
Yeah, I think any sort of new situation, it does give the impetus and the opportunity for people to work in different ways. And so often in all aspects of our lives, we do things because we do things, and that's the way we do them. So new circumstances bring around new ways of working. I think also, just going back to the points just being touched upon now about donor support, that those of us who have been around long enough can remember the banking crisis, and at that time there was charitable giving held up, but particularly for local causes, where the donors were really membership to the cause and to the mission. I think it remains to be seen as to whether that will be the same this time around, or whether there'll be a shift towards organisations perceived to be in the front line of the response to COVID. So, obviously, health, social care, mental health, domestic abuse, those kind of issues the support may hold up stronger in those areas. But that, as I say, remains to be seen.
Yeah, if I could just ask Ellie, I think Ellie's got a question.
Thank you. Do you anticipate this, I guess, to any of the presenters, do you anticipate more mergers or strategic partnerships between organizations? Do you think that's something the funders are expecting now at this time?
If I could go, Ben, yes, I mean, that's something that was being discussed in all the recruitments that we've been doing over recent times. Well, not all, sorry, but in a lot of them, those kind of questions are being asked by the candidates coming forward. Is there going to be a merger? And I think, as I mentioned earlier on, there will be a lot of reorganisation going on, and not everybody who's been furloughed is going to go back to a job or back to the same job. So I think, yeah, there's going to be an increased impetus on the sector generally to look at those kind of mergers and efficiencies, because donors have been asking for that for some time, prior to March 23rd.
Yeah, Ellie, I think, okay, we've got to take two more questions here. So Sam, I don't know if you're Samantha or Sam, sorry about that. And then I've got Mrs. M. Coleman. I don't know what the M is but I've just got those hands up. So if we go Sam first, and then Mrs. M. Coleman, and then we'll be able to just have a general chat if people wish to share. So over to Sam first.
Hello, sorry to be cheeky with two questions. Thank you. I was interested in if you've had, the speakers have been having conversations about more long-term, because I know you just mentioned the sort of banking impact, and then there was a case where trusts and foundations particularly were really keen to help, but then the next sort of 2-3 years there was a big drop. So I guess the question is, are conversations now having, for trusts and foundations, is it worth an approach of the next 3 years versus the sort of emergency appeal? So emergency appeals going out now can be really clear and targeted. And I guess my question is it fair to anticipate a drop in trusts and foundations in the next few years as per the last sort of UK emergency?
Yeah, Andrew, perhaps?
Yeah, I think you should definitely be prepared for a drop in trust fundraising expenditure beyond 2020. The advice I've been giving my clients is definitely respond appropriately to the COVID-19 funds which are available now in light of your changing of your normalities. But the advice I'm giving my clients is that, yeah, those who are needing 2, 3 year, 5 year funding is to maybe work those up over the next couple of months, even throughout the summer, and maybe even start to submit them the early parts of the autumn. My gut, in terms of the previous question, I've seen a lot of larger funds kind of come together and kind of create some very large pots of money. And my worry is that as lockdown eases and memories unfortunately fade and we kind of drift back into some sort of normality, I think those kind of larger pots of money are going to stop, and maybe new ones won't re-emerge. But in terms of your question, Sam, my advice, which I would echo for the ones I'm giving my own clients, is respond now to the ones which are open, and maybe look towards more multi-year funding towards the back end of the summer.
Great. Okay, Mrs. Coleman. Oh, 1 second. Let me just unmute you. There we go.
Hi everybody. Thank you for having me. My M stands for Melissa.
Hello, Melissa.
Hi. I've joined really for informational sort of gathering based purpose only. I work for a software company, and we have developed a free tool that allows large volunteer networks to manage their volunteer requests in the community. And I wanted to sort of understand how charities are really working at the moment. That's why I've joined the call, and to see what your thoughts are on approaching charities to offer them the free tool without coming across as insensitive or as we're trying to sell them something. We've taken our main product and delivered an offshoot of it, and we want to be as sensitive as we can. We're also installing this in hospitals everywhere. So I just wanted your thoughts really on how best to sort of go about discussing the product with charities that we think we can help, but sensitive to the sort of time of the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll absolutely open the floor to whoever wishes to, whoever would like the software, and what's the best way of them approaching you. Go for it, everybody. Wish to unmute themselves?
I can't offer that kind of insight, Melissa, I'm afraid. All I can say at the moment is that I'm getting loads and loads of sales calls for all sorts of products, whether they're relevant to me or not. And the timing just seems wrong. You know, a lot of them it's inappropriate. I'm going to ask for fleet car hire rental, you know, anything and everything, software packages, new deals on this, new deals on that. And there's, rather like I was saying earlier on, there's a lot of distress out there, and it's the same on the part of you know, companies. So I don't know. I wouldn't begin to know how to advise it, because people's attention are elsewhere. They're not looking at the longer term. So I'd say be very careful. I don't know what other people would say in the room. Do be very, very careful. I mean, you're right to be sensitive to it, because I think bad news can travel fast. Yeah,
I think the concern is obviously, again, we've installed actually in Guy's and St Thomas, and we're helping the doctors schedule their shifts there. But again, this is a free tool, so again, I don't want to come across as salesy at all. We're just trying to help volunteer networks that are out there, but it's a difficult water to tread.
Yeah, I do, absolutely. But even if it's free, it's still going to require organisational change. It's going to require training and development for people, and people taking on to new ways of working. Right here, right now, particularly the organisations you're talking about, they're going to have other priorities.
Okay. Well, thank you for your feedback. It's good to know.
Okay. So what I just thought, just for the last few minutes, if anybody has been with us the last 3 streams, or this is your first stream, and you've got any information that you'd like to share anything that's gone really well for you as an organization in the last month or so, for things that have not gone well, whatever you'd like to share, what other topics you'd like us to discuss. With over the last 3 streams, we've done recruitment, trust and foundations. We've done like a coordination of the Jewish community. That was Debbie Fox of the JLC. We've spoken about communications, and we had a bit of mindfulness at the beginning of the first call. So if anyone would like to jump in and tell any stories that they'd like to tell, I'm more than happy to use the last few minutes to listen. If there's anything out there that people wish to share, if not, David. Go for it, David.
I kind of just wanted to perhaps open up some thoughts really on the whole issue that Ellie raised about mergers, etc. Obviously, it's very early days to see that, but there are a number of appeals out there. The largest one is the Jewish Care Nightingale Fed one, and it'd just be kind of interesting to see whether that nets a result which is good for everybody or not, which will give us some indication about people's desire for merging. On the one hand, we all know that it kind of makes sense to cut to reduce back office costs and for things to come together. On the other hand, we've been saying this in the community probably for the last 30 years. It's not something which is new, and yet there's not been a lot of movement on the whole merger front. Is this going to be something which is going to accelerate that discussion or not? And somebody else was talking a bit before about just sort of when we come out of this, we'll have short memories, basically. So I'm just keen to sort of hear what other people have got to think about it, because you know it's certainly something that I guess a lot of people are thinking about. Those people in those organisations, and those people who are in organisations that might be in a position to have these discussions. Whether anybody's got any views on it.
I would just say in response, David, that increasingly I think funders are asking added value. So even if one doesn't want to anticipate a merger, to be able to know your marketplace and also know your added value at this time. I noticed some people using terms like "we are frontline," and as in, what is my purpose at the moment? If that's not crystal clear, it's going to be very hard to convince someone who's a new funder to give. And in some cases, you're right. I don't think mergers are necessarily the way forward, but they may be asked that question.
No, interesting. Anyone else like to add to David? I mean, as David was mentioning, with the Jewish Care Appeal, with the Fed and Hammersmith, that's all under the umbrella of the Association of Jewish Care Homes, all a similar name. There's also another social care appeal going to be launched soon by the JLC. And I know that Work Avenue have done a great hardship fund. And it's interesting looking at the trusts and foundations that are supporting that. So, you know, we're all sharing conversations. I think that when Debbie Fox was on the call last time, there was a question by Simi to say, you know, everybody here is sharing. Do you all share? Do the lay leaders or the senior volunteers share conversations as well? So definitely an interesting time for collaboration, which was the word that I wondered if it would come out in the call today. So thank you, David, for that. Any last thoughts from anyone else would like to just mention? Good stuff, bad stuff, stuff they want to share? Any other questions?
Sorry, Ben, just one further little indication that I forgot to mention at the beginning. We've had 2 assignments just recently where people have been recruited, one to a chief executive role, one to a chief operating officer role. In both instances, the candidate, having accepted the offer of appointment and signed contracts, then withdrew because they felt they couldn't leave their current employer at this point in time, which we've never had anything like that before, certainly. I can't remember that it happened once before in the last 20 years, and that was something entirely circumstantial. So yeah, very unusual times.
One other thing that I wanted to add was there is this new furloughed portal which JVN and JLC have launched, which I think is brilliant, to use the skills we have in our community, where you're not allowed to use them for your own organisation for the benefit of others. And it's not a merger as such, David, but if we're thinking of the utopian version of what our community should look like, it would be great if our professionals had an infrastructure that supported them to always be able to work like that, so that we're not in competition. We are almost a civil service of people that work in our community for our community, using our best skills and expertise rather than just what a narrow job description might force you to do. And it would be wonderful to see what we can build on after this. It's not an experiment, that feels disrespectful, but this opportunity that the furlough portal will now give us as a community.
I think it's you're right. I think JVN is a fantastic organisation.
There we go. Okay, and on that very positive note, unless anyone else is waving at me, I don't think they are. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you to Simon and to Andrew for their considerable contribution, and to you all as well, those who asked questions and those who didn't. That's not a problem. Please, via the Facebook group, send us a message to Simi or to myself of if there were any specific topics you'd like to talk about or you'd like to hear being spoken about on the next stream, which hopefully should be in 2 weeks' time.
Or if you wanted to make an offering, was the other thing. There's people that have all sorts of skills and expertise that they want to share, and some people are finding themselves with more time on their hands to be able to prepare for things like this. So if you want to, this is very much a forum that we've created for this community. Ben and I don't own it, we're just running it. So please come forward if you've got anything you do want to share.
There we go. Right. Okay. Thank you all for your participation. Lovely to see you all, and hopefully see you the next time. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.